Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to A Walk in My Shoes, brought to you by the AMP program. And one of the cool things that AMP allows us to do is to talk with successful people in different career fields. And today we are very excited to welcome Maria Badillo. She is a creative services producer at the local ABC affiliate in Richmond, Virginia. Maria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
How's everything going today in Virginia?
It's going really well. It's other than the weather, which is rainy and dreary. We're actually having a really great week at the station. We just got a couple of award announcements, a Murrow Award for an event we did in December, and a second one for that, nomination for that one, and then a nomination for a commercial series that I did last year as well. So it's a good week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is fantastic. I told you, successful people. We're bringing them in. I want to jump right in. Can you walk us through a typical day? What is a day like at the station for you?
Each day is pretty different, and that's something I love about my job. If you look at sort of the trajectory of what my role has looked like over the years, it's changed pretty significantly. More and more in the television industry, you see jobs being combined. So people would have these individual roles and they're kind of blending certain ones together as technology is able to replace certain aspects of what we do. So where once upon a time there was a designated shooter, the person who ran the camera, and then a designated editor who would create the piece afterwards, they're now one and the same. So when people ask me what I do, I say I write and shoot and edit. Basically, all the video production required for a project, I do from top to bottom. And I mostly do that for commercials. I also do it for promotions for the news station, and also for short documentaries and things like that. We like to say that we're a company within a company. We work for a local news station, but we're sort of what my boss likes to say is the special ops department. We do things sort of within that and promote different local businesses and create ad revenue to support what our news department does. So our day to day, it could be a lot. Today's a lot of writing. Some days are a lot of editing. Some days are a lot of shooting. Some days are a mix of any one of the three, and some days are just brainstorming. It fluctuates, and that's something that I find really stimulating as a creative.
That's cool. Would you say that like over your career, has your team shrunk because of technology since now, everything's combined?
In a way, in my time, no. Actually, we've grown by one. My department is now a group of 7. However, we're divided into sort of subgroups. So when we say creative services, you've got a couple of promotions producers, a couple of graphic artists, and a couple of commercial producers, myself and another commercial producer, and then our boss who looks over each of us. So my team is a team of 2, and that has been the same throughout, although we help each other out depending on what the project is within our department. However, if you look at the station predating me, the commercial production team, I believe, used to be 3. And would have a designated shooter and a designated editor, and then kind of I think a blend of the two, or someone who would do more of the directing. But it's evolved quite a lot, and it's interesting to see how it's sort of, even in my time, what aspects of the job have changed, even though the number of people haven't changed. For example, I used to run a studio camera for a long form commercial, sort of infomercial thing that we do, and that has since been replaced by a robotic camera. So, it changes, but I still have my job. It's just that one aspect has shifted.
Okay. So obviously you work with your one other
Yes.
teammate, but who are the other people that you work with on a day-to-day basis? Clients directly? Are there middlemen involved? Who do you have to deal with on a daily basis?
Yes. So in commercial land, as I like to call it, I have my one partner. We were referenced as Hall and Oates the other day. You can't say my name without saying his name, and vice versa. We are joined at the hip. But I do work directly with clients in commercial land. So whatever clients are coming to the station to ask for production or airtime, they do go through our sales team, who I work with directly. So they'll be assigned an account manager who's going to help them figure out what their needs are, and if they need something shot, whether it's a commercial or long form video or any sort of video production needs that they have, they will then meet with me. So I do spend a lot of time with clients and sort of their entourages, people who are sort of in their field, and whoever is sort of involved in that. We usually have a direct point of contact, but it can flow out from there.
Okay. So before I jump in, before we go too far back, how long have you worked here?
It'll be 6 years this summer.
6 years. Now, when you were younger, is this the career field? Is this the life path that you saw for yourself?
Yes and no.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So I've been writing since I was very young. To me, I think of myself as a writer first and foremost. I was first published at age 11. I've been writing since I was about eight or nine, when I started writing my own stories and just making stuff up. And I think when I was about maybe early teenage years or right beforehand, I remember asking my parents for a video camera because I wanted to start capturing some of the stories that were in my head. I didn't get a video camera, but that's okay because now I work in TV. I've got my own.
You have plenty of cameras now.
I have many a camera, but yeah, it wasn't exactly what I envisioned, but I did see it being a career in storytelling. To me, that's the crux of what I do. Is I connect with people and I have the opportunity to tell their stories, and more often than not, those stories are of huge benefit to other people, and that's really beautiful. It's sort of a community building reaction to what my work entails. So I didn't see myself necessarily working at a TV station or a news station. I was never a big news watcher, or even a commercial watcher. I used to mute the commercials as a kid.
So hopefully people are not muting your commercials now when they're watching.
I hope not. But I also recognize that that's not what people come to TV to watch unless it's the Super Bowl for some reason.
Yeah.
And so it is a challenge in figuring out how to capture people's attentions. And for me, I think because I didn't intend to come into sort of a marketing area, that's what gives me a different sort of perspective on what marketing should be. I'm trying to reach people and connect people rather than just spew information out onto the airwaves. I always strive to help my clients build commercials that are going to teach and inspire and encourage and connect. And sometimes that goes really well when a client kind of understands where I'm coming from on that. And others are just, no, I just want to do this. This is my goal. And that's what they want to do. And so, that's the direction that we go in. So it's a collaborative experience, which I appreciate. But yeah, it's about storytelling and connection and love. I think it's a lot about love. We want to bring people together. We want to help each other. I don't think a lot of marketers talk about it from that perspective, but that's where I come from.
Okay. So do you think definitely coming from more of like a writing, creative thinking instead of maybe a marketing or advertising background has helped?
I think so. Yeah. I think it allows for me to bring different ideas into the space. I work with a lot of veterans, for example. My department is a lot of veterans. And so I come in, a little bit younger, a little bit with a little bit of a different background, where a lot of my colleagues worked in news before they moved over to the creative team, and I just jumped straight into the creative team. I do think it's a big difference. I look at it as a storyteller, and when my boss has need for that perspective, a lot of times, there's a community event or or some sort of project that really needs that storytelling foundation. He turns to me for that. He knows that I'm that person, and I think that every year when I have my annual review, he points that out. You're the person that I go to for these things, and I need that. And that makes me feel really good and makes me feel like I'm bringing something new to this space.
Well, that's awesome. That means that all those little crazy ideas you had when you were young they're all coming to fruition. That wasn't
Yeah,
wasted time you playing. That was you preparing, right? That was you preparing for your career.
exactly.
Um, so I think a lot of people are going to be interested in the actual journey. So the more literal step-by-step process. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you go to high school? And can you take me from your path from high school to when you first got hired on at the place where you work now?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Columbus. I went to Limworth Alternative Program. If you're not familiar, it's in the Worthington School District, and it is based on experiential learning. To me, that really is the reason why I learned to explore what my options were, because it wasn't just learn in the classroom, it was go out and do it. Every year you get 1 week called interim, or it was when I was there. Interim allowed you to essentially try out a field and see how you liked it. Something you're interested in, spend a week working in that field and see how it goes. And then by the time you get to your senior year, you get to do it for an entire semester. Or for some people, you could do it for your entire year. It
Okay.
was phenomenal. Highly recommend. So it started there, and that's when I started playing with video for the first time, because I hated PowerPoint. Hated it. So I refused to make PowerPoints for my projects in school and started making videos instead.
All right.
And that's really where my fascination with video began and grew and was encouraged, which I definitely appreciated. And in college, I did the same thing. So you have to do a presentation. Professor, can I do a video instead? I went to college. I started at the University of Dayton for 2 years before I went to Richmond, the American International University in London. Very easy to say.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it's in London. I went overseas. I finished my degree there. It was in communications. And then I stayed in London for an additional year to do a master's in creative writing.
Okay.
That all throughout that, I continued doing video work, started collaborating with other video makers, whether they were at school with me or people I met on YouTube, funnily enough. Did that for a long while, and that was a very good experience to work on a team and get to know what that process looks like and get to know beyond what I had just learned.
Mm-hmm.
I did take some video production classes in high school, in college, but that was not the focus. It was more broad than that, just communications as a whole. And after college, I did not go straight to the station. I first got a job through AmeriCorps. And it was not even remotely in my field. I was managing volunteers for a local furniture bank, and which was fun. Loved it, just not in my field. And I went into the interview, and I couldn't help but mention that I'm a storyteller and I like doing these things and I make videos, and this is something that's very, very, very much a focus in my goals in life. Maybe it could be a benefit. And they hired me with that in mind, and had me do videos, even though that wasn't technically my job, for the nonprofit. And went on to, not just for the furniture bank, I was doing videos for what's called the works department there, and they help people who are transitioning, if they've gone through any sort of addiction recovery program or they've been incarcerated or anything like that, and they're transitioning back into the workforce. And I got to tell some of their stories. And that got me hooked. I mean, I just love talking to these guys and seeing what their experiences were, and just being so inspired and motivated by their successes that I just wanted to share them with the world. So I did that for a year and a half. And then I promise we're getting to the station, because that's next. I did a lot of networking between that and getting to the station. And as an introvert, it was painful. I'll be honest.
How did you do that networking? Like, what did that look like?
It looked like talking to people that I knew and letting people know what I was looking for. I wanted a creative career. I was pretty flexible on what that could look like. I have video skills. I have writing skills. So, if that triggers any thoughts for you, let me know if you know anyone that I could talk to.
Mm.
And it essentially became a series of almost interviews of, can I talk to you about what you do, kind of like we're doing, what you do,
What you do.
and what your experience has been. And I would talk a little bit about myself, and if they had any ideas of either someone else I could talk to or somewhere I could apply. That was sort of what I got out of it. And I did that for a good long while, and ended up meeting a volunteer at the nonprofit that I was working at, who was the spouse of the general manager at my station at the time, no longer, but at the time, and said, you need to talk to her. And it wasn't for a particular job. It
Mhm.
wasn't to work at the station. It was just to talk to her and see if she had any ideas. And lo and behold, a vacancy came up, and she said, I'd like you to meet the creative services director. And I guess the interview went well because here I
Yeah.
am.
So that's the importance of reaching out just for the sake of reaching out and making, talking to as many people as possible. You never know who's connected to who, and you never know what
Yep.
options. That's great. I want to back up a tiny bit. Where did that decision come from? I'm going to college. I'm focusing on communications. You know what? I'm moving abroad to continue my education. Take me through that process. How did that happen?
That is a strange and complex story. I'm going to try and simplify it.
All right.
So I actually went to college to do music,
Okay.
because I have too many hobbies.
Hmm.
I played the French horn in high school and middle school and a little of elementary school. It seemed like a natural progression. I'd always been writing as well, but music was more the focus in high school for me.
Hmm.
Um, and I got injured between high school and college and could no longer play. And it forced me to reconsider what I was going to do with my college years.
Hmm.
If I couldn't do music, if I couldn't perform, I couldn't do music. Um, and it forced me to choose another major. That was very difficult, and not difficult in terms of figuring out what to do next. That felt very freeing, but it was very difficult to let go of music, which I very much saw as my future. Um,
Yeah.
so when you go to a college, I showed up at the University of Dayton thinking I'm going to do music, and then it doesn't pan out. Um, and I'm looking, okay, what are my options? And I settled on, I think I left UD as a double major in English and digital media, something like that. And I decided I was going to do a year abroad.
Hmm.
I intended to come back and finish at the University of Dayton, but then I got there and didn't want to leave. I chose London because, as a writer, to me, that was just an obvious choice of literary history. And a lot of the things that I had studied in school had come from Great Britain. So why not go there? Got there, loved it, stayed. I just stayed at the college that I did my study abroad with. It wasn't really a choice. It was just the school that they sent me to for study abroad. So I don't have a super big connection with that school. It was a vessel for me to travel and experience and learn. And then choosing to stay at Goldsmiths, University of London, for my master's. Um, that was a choice. I really liked Goldsmiths. I liked their programs. I liked what they offered. And that, again, allowed me to just experience. I had amazing peers that encouraged me to explore and perform. They got me into performing. I'd never thought of myself as a performer before. Uh, Poetry mostly,
Ah,
and I was on stages kind of just randomly. They would bring me along and say, "Hey, we're running this event. Come read for us." And without them, I wouldn't have gotten into that. And ever since, I've been reading and performing. Actually, last month I performed at the Edgar Allan Poe Museum in Baltimore. They reached
right.
out and asked me if I would read. So I credit my peers from my master's program for getting me into that. That was not something I saw for myself.
Okay. Um, What do you think was, if you had to say one or two benefits, studying or just living abroad that maybe you wouldn't have had, or some skills or some perspectives rather, that you wouldn't have had if you stayed in the States your whole life?
I think travel is essential for people. Learn and experience. Again, Linworth taught me you got to experience it. You can't just read it in a book. You have to go. You have to go live it.
Hmm.
So to me, living in London taught me a different culture and a different perspective on life. It taught me different spelling and grammar, which seems
Whoops.
minimal, but it is a
Incorrect
challenge.
spelling and grammar, right? We would argue.
So yeah, if I used American spelling and grammar, I was docked points. So I had to learn. And then the reverse, when I came back, I struggled reverting my brain back to American English. Yeah, it does challenge you, and it encourages me or encouraged me to um, broaden my perspectives, challenge my beliefs, challenge what I thought I knew about the world. There's a lot that we're taught in American schooling that it just isn't going to be accurate because it comes out of a textbook. It's never going to be really what the experience is. History is just it's just stories. History is just stories
So
that
you
we.
were looking for some new stories, it looked like.
I was looking for new stories, new
Yeah.
inspiration, and new perspectives, and it has been a huge boon to me as a creator.
That's awesome. I think it's something very important to point out, because I don't think a lot of young people think that way. There's a pathway, um, whether, even if you're not looking to go high school, college, job, even if you're gonna like deviate from that pathway, I don't think a lot of people think of traveling as an option, and it can be quite beneficial. Um, whether it's schooling, or I think it would be better if we think about your job. What has been an obstacle, or maybe like a tough client or a tough project that you've had? How did you overcome that, or did you overcome that?
Well, let's go with that one because I think there are many temporary obstacles. A project could be a pain in the butt, but we move forward. We get through
Mhm.
it. I think one of the ongoing obstacles for me in my field, at least in my experience, my little pocket of the creative services world, is that it is very male dominated, and in my case, very white dominated. Um, I'm a Latina, and I am surrounded by white men all day. And they're great people. They're phenomenal people. And at the same time, again, when we talked about different perspectives as a writer, I think almost the same thing from, being from a different background and a different gender is also playing into that different perspectives. There are times where it feels very difficult. It feels like I'm not getting my point across. I'm not being heard, and that does happen. And I don't think that's exclusive just to my particular scenario. I think it's something that women and people of color experience everywhere to some degree.
Mhm.
In my case, I don't think any sort of discrimination is ever purposeful or malicious in any stretch of the imagination. Again, the people I work for are phenomenal. I think there are just differences in culture, differences in perspective that create friction sometimes. And I've had some clients who I had one client in particular, as I was pitching an idea, stopped the meeting, turned to me and said, "Oh, so you're the brains and the beauty." And my job is to make the client happy, so I'm not going to start a fight in the middle of the meeting, but that's not an appropriate thing to say. I realize you're trying to flatter me, but that's not what we're here for.
Yeah,
My
you're
title is creative services producer, and that has nothing to do with my anything. Anything. I am a creative services producer first and foremost. I'm a writer first and foremost. Um, So yeah, heavy topic, but I think it's something that is an ongoing challenge. And I did actually ask my boss once, why am I the only female? Why am I the only non-white person in this department?
Mm-hmm.
And his answer was, for the life of me, I can't get anyone else to apply. And that's why I encourage people to think outside of what they think is possible and challenge what they think they know. Going back to the London thing, you know, what I thought was possible and impossible, I was able to challenge a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
There are positions available that need those perspectives that aren't applying for.
I
So
see.
go for it.
That's
Try it.
that's that's very interesting because it's almost like you're taking something that, could be a negative or maybe has been a negative throughout most of your life, and that there are certain places, if you look, that actually need that perspective. That thing that's been potentially a negative part of your life is something that is needed in certain areas. So it doesn't have to be. And the fact that you're able to kind of shift over and turn it into something positive for you, but it sounds like more importantly for the group that you work for, is awesome. So let's finish off here with something a little happier. What is the best project or the most fun project that you can remember working on?
There's a handful. There's been some really cool ones, but I'm going to go with the one that just won the award because like I said,
Of
my job
course.
is well, and here's the reason why. Not just because I won an award. That's just a cherry on a sundae. Because the project itself was a ton of fun. It was an opportunity where, rather than having some clients are a little more hands-on, they want it to look their way, and that's fine. It's their commercial. It's not mine. It's for them. But there are some clients that come around and go, you know what? You're the professional. Just go and see what
Just
happens.
go, huh?
And I had one that particular client was for CVWMA, and that is the recycling organization here in Central Virginia. They came to us, and they have a history of doing really fun, quirky commercials.
Mm-hmm.
My boss did one many moons ago that had to do with like hand puppets. He created a whole set.
Oh
His
my
major is
goodness.
in sculpture, by the way. Creative service
I
director
guess that
majored in
kind of
sculpture.
connects. Sculpting
And
puppets.
he built the whole set and created these hand puppets, and it was like the pieces of recycling were talking to each other. Anyway, so we had a precedent of these really fun commercials. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
my turn. I'm in the role now. What is it going to look like? And I pitched a commercial spot where they wanted to focus the spot on what's called contaminants. And what they mean by that are things that end up in your recycle bin that aren't supposed to be there. And they
Mm.
gave us a whole list, which in and of itself is like, okay, don't recycle these things. You could make
Right.
it a very straightforward commercial. Or in my case, I decided to create a haunted recycling bin that spat those items back out at someone.
All right.
And it was a ton of fun. I pitched it in the meeting. It came to me during the meeting, and they loved it. So I wrote the scripts on that premise. We had one where it spat the contaminants out, and one where they were talking about how people don't always remember when they're supposed to put their bin out at the curb.
Mm.
So we created one where the recycle bin essentially fights back, and the person takes it out to the curb and says, "Nope, it's not our day," and it ends up back at the house. So it was a really fun
Uh-huh.
concept, and then the shoot was amazing. The client didn't even show up to the shoot, so it's just me and my other half and
Uh-huh.
someone we got to play the person, the person experiencing this haunted recycling place.
Experiencing the haunted trash can. That's fantastic.
And it
Now
was
that
so
sounds
fun.
like the 8-year-old you writing a commercial. It does. It's like pure fun. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I'm sure people remember if they're picturing their trash can fighting them like a dog or something, not to go out to the people are going to remember what day is recycle day in Virginia.
Yeah.
um well, I want to finish up, so I want you to give me like just a 30 seconds if you can. Um, Young people who are looking into this field, what advice would you give them if you had to give like a synthesized piece of advice?
Keep making content. My boss told me well after he'd hired me that he hired me based on my reel, not my resume. So if you want to make art, you want to make content, keep making it no matter what you're doing. I kept making content when I was doing AmeriCorps, even though that wasn't really my focus. I kept making stuff so that by the time I was ready to apply for a position that was going to be more creative focused, I had content that I had been creating that I could show and say, hey, this is what I've been working on. Here's what I can do. I could do more with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my boss told me. It was the reel, not the resume. So keep making content. Don't ever stop. Whatever it is you got going on in life, if you end up in a job that doesn't feel like it's the right match, that's okay. Keep making your stuff. It will help you when you need it.
It sounds like your reel was your resume at
Exactly.
that point. That's fantastic. Well, Maria, thank you so much for taking the time, letting us walk in your shoes. And good luck in the future. Many more awards, I'm sure, coming in the future. So,
Thank you.
again, thank you so much. And this has been a walk in my shoes.